You're now listening to Directing Magic with your host, Marquette Jones.
Hello, and welcome back to Directing Magic Podcast. This is Marquette Jones, your host for the day. And with me is wonderful, interesting, longtime director, Rosser Goodman. I'm really happy to have you on the show. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
I have been following you on social media for quite a while, so this is a treat for me. And I say that pretty often, but they're just people that I'm like, oh, they seem interesting. And then next thing you know, I'm following them on all the platforms. And you're one of those folks.
Well, I feel honored. Thank you very much.
So how are you today?
I'm good. It's Saturday. I'm great.
So you're based out of Los Angeles and you have a new short film called PEA POD. Can you tell people about that? What's the journey with that film? First of all, what's it about?
Well, it's 4 women in a ride share and it's a comedy. And I mean, because it's only 5 minutes, that's the summary, really. It's just 4 women in a ride share. Funny women, because really, if I try to explain it, it kind of would give it away, right?
Yeah.
It would.
It will, but you guys should watch it because it is horrifyingly funny.
Yeah, and very unexpected.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a feature film director, and I'm looking to break into television, so that we keep our our chops up. We do these projects. So actually, last year I'd seen this. It was an HBO comedy challenge, like a competition put on by this really cool women's comedy festival in Boston. And they're all the way in Boston, but somehow they, connected really well with Hollywood and their judges in this competition sponsored by HBO. And I just totally caught my eye and lit me up. And I really, really wanted to participate in it. And so
what's the name of the film festival? Or what's the name of the people in Boston?
I think it's just called Women in Comedy Festival.
Okay.
That's it. And most of it is stand-up. And a lot of funny women from New York come up to it. But, NBC was involved. They had everybody. ABC, they had NBC, and all the execs flew out and got to see, tons of funny women. And it was just the coolest thing ever. And they do it every year. Mm-hmm. And there was one piece of it, though, that they did dedicate to filmmaking. So obviously that's the part I was like, wait, what? Because it's the horrible stereotype. Women aren't funny. Women can't be funny. And that obviously is BS. So this is turns that inside out. It's all about celebrating funny women, whether on stage or on the screen. So this competition was, one of the execs at HBO was like, you have to start with the line, I'll take whatever you got. And so mm-hmm. I just love puzzles like that because mm-hmm. I immediately think of, okay, how can I do that? How can I do that? And the other aspect to it was they were very clear, the festival founders, they were like, please show women in a way that we don't always see women, which mm-hmm. that's my MO. I always want to show everyone in a way that we don't typically see them because mm-hmm. I'm just so tired of old tropes and stereotypes. And especially when you get into that, there's a lot of sexism, there's a lot of racism. It's just innate and it's passé, it's tired, it's offensive. And I just loved their premise of no, do it differently. I was like, well, that speaks to my soul. So it lit me up. PEA POD really came from that. But that same week or so was when Cheryl Bedford launched her nonprofit, Women of Color Unite, the JTC list. And she's actually been a friend of ours for almost 20 years. And yeah, we'd run into her during Black History Month at one of the Gina Davis events. And my wife, who's a costume designer, Onita Parker, she and Cheryl produced 10 movies that Onita had costume design. So it was just oh, hey. And that's when she told us, oh, I'm launching Oscar weekend. I'm launching this group, the JTC list, named after my late mother. And I just loved it. It also lit me up. I just loved it. And I said, Cheryl, I totally support you. And the launch party, in fact, was coming up and you had to be a woman of color to go. So I couldn't even go. And I was like, I love this. This is awesome. I really, really, really supported it, from the get-go.
How did you feel about that, knowing that you weren't allowed to go?
I loved it. I literally loved it. I was like, heck yes. I would be cussing, but because it's a podcast, I would say heck yes. But I just, Cheryl's amazing and inspiring and brilliant and talented. And, one of the mottos that she's now put into the nonprofit is no marginalized group left behind, which I really appreciate, because even though I'm white, I am a marginalized group, because I'm a woman, but I'm a marginalized group because I'm a lesbian. And so I'm a queer woman. I've dealt with my version of that, practically my whole life, from being a tomboy and things like that. So the idea that she was like, you can't come, Rosser, to this launch party, I just, again, to me, it was like it turned something inside out. And I love that. And I just supported her from the get-go. And we actually, a group of us, went over the day before because it was this wonderful actor, Kelly Perrine, was at his house in the hills. And she was like, okay.
Wait, what was his name again?
Kelly Perrine.
Okay.
A beautiful house. So she's like, I'm going to hold our lunch party at my friend Kelly's house, but I need people to come over the day before and help us get it ready. And so it was a little weird. I'm going over and I'm helping the house get ready for a party I can't go to. And I'm like, I was like, I get it. I was dying to go. I wished I could have gone because I was so excited. And I invited all the women of color I could think of in entertainment, that should be on this list to be hired, that aren't hired or overlooked. And a lot of them went and they're like, wow, thanks. And they joined, it doesn't cost anything to join. But since then, there haven't been events that are, that I can't go to. And actually a little bit after that, Cheryl said, she asked me to be on the board of it. And so
that's what I was waiting to get to, because I'm like, so somehow you went from not being allowed to come to being on the board of directors, which is awesome. But I wanted to hear, how did that happen?
I mean, that's how it happened. And so in the middle of all of this, right, in the beginning is this HBO comedy challenge is happening for this Boston Comedy Festival. And I'm like, you know what? I am casting all Black women. That's it. Black women. It's 4 women in a ride share, but they're all going to be Black. And, I told Cheryl and she loved it. She loved it. And I was like, okay, great. So we all came together. We only had 5 days really to make it because I found out about it so late. But making things quickly, and adapting is, one of my specialties as a director because of my production background. So yeah, we all came together and the cast was 100% women, 80% women of color. And then the crew, I want to say we were 80% female crew, half of which were women of color. So our first AD, our UPM, our co-producer, it just, right on down the line. I just really, and I hired from the list. So actually PEA POD, it all comes full circle because PEA POD, the short film, was actually the very first project, the very first film made hiring from the JTC list.
Oh, look at that. So did you feel any different? Did that experience feel any different than any of your past projects?
I mean, any project that, I'm doing sort of through my company, I mean, they usually feel pretty good because we're, bringing in people we know and our friends and stuff like that. Yeah, I don't even know if I can explain it, but it did. It felt extra good. It went really well. And I don't know. I was just really proud of everybody. I had the best time. I always have the best time on set, but I mean, I really had the best time.
Did you get any pushback with PEA POD as a white director directing women of color?
No. I mean, people just seemed excited. I know when we were doing our casting, our co-producer asked me, she goes, Rosser, and she's a Black woman. She's like, Rosser, I know you said you wanted everyone, all the women in the car to be Black women. She just was verifying. She's like, are you sure, did you mean any, sort of woman of color? And I just interrupted her, shut her down. And I was like, Black. Everyone has to be Black. And she just
I love how people dance around that. I'm like, no, I mean Black, thanks.
She beamed. Her grin just leapt off of her face. She was so happy. Because
and what I also like about what you did is they're so different from each other. Because we are so different from each other, period. But you could see and feel the individuality in each character that you have there, which I thought was brilliant.
Yeah. And, I did this other short film for the Easter Seals Disability Film Challenge. And, it was one of those 48-hour things. And, again, I'm like, I'm never going to sign up for that. But because it was about disability, I was like, oh, I'm signing up for that. Because, again, there's just no awareness, barely any awareness. There's no representation. And so for that challenge, we ended up winning the Best Filmmaker Award for it. It's a short film called Invisible. It's also on my website. And I had one friend who had cerebral palsy who was an actor, and I met him on set like years ago. It ended up, you find out within 48 hours how to write it. Oh, it has to be a mystery. You want to crack a code. They give you all these guidelines, parameters. So I wrote it. And after I wrote it, the part I'd written for him, anyone could play. It was not specific to his disability and cerebral palsy. It wasn't like, okay, he's this, he's that. It was a role you could play, I could play, anyone could play.
Yeah.
He just happened to have a disability, and then he played that role. And that's kind of the characters in PEA POD. It's like I wrote it, but it wasn't like you have to be, it could even be 4 men in the car, or 2 men and 2 women. But it's like, it could be anybody, any color. You could have disability. You could have anything.
No, I'm laughing because I'm like picturing it with 4 dudes. Yeah.
I'm not saying I'd want to shoot it with 4 dudes.
But I hear you. I hear your point. Absolutely.
Yeah. In terms of writing, it's something that, cjane.org, the Gina Davis, Institute on Gender and Media talks about all the time. They're like, write it in. If you don't say, you say a boardroom, this is the example they give a lot. Oh, there's, a boardroom, but they say specifically state half women and half men. And, the 80s cast it that way. I would go further and specifically say 40% people of color. Half are women. With the JTC list, Women of Color Unite, a couple days ago, we had the very, very first Women of Color Disability Summit. And so obviously it's near and dear to my heart. I've done that film a couple years ago. There's just so much we need to write that in as well. Say in your boardroom, there's a woman in a wheelchair, or there a sign language interpreter. Just we have to write this stuff in. And then, Gina Davis is like, if you see it, you can be it.
I'm glad you brought up the Easter Seals Disability Challenge because, let's see, last whenever Sundance Film Festival, so I was there and I was able to meet one of the, I don't know if he's the founder or if he's just the manager of the Easter Seals Disability Challenge. Okay. I was like super excited about it, right? And I brought it back to my class as I teach, and I'm like, okay, you guys, when this challenge comes up, if anybody wants to do it, I'll give you extra credit. And no one did it. And I was so frustrated, but because I was ready to hand out A's, go do this disability challenge. You have the equipment, you have each other.
Absolutely.
Giving you incentive, and it just didn't fly this semester, but I'm going to do it again. So I'm hoping that a few of them will hear you talk about what a great experience it was and will feel inspired. So that is my prompt for you. What did you get out of doing the Easter Seals Disability Challenge?
It was fantastic because it wasn't, again, it was a puzzle. It wasn't just, okay, here's a 48-hour challenge with, go make a film, because, filmmaking feels like that anyway. So for me, it didn't light me up. That wasn't something I wanted to just go spend my free time on. But specifically because it included disability, where the parameters there were someone major on the team had to have a disability. So it could have been the writer or the director, for example, or it could have been, someone on screen. But actually the movie can be about anything. So you could also tell your students, it doesn't even have to be about anyone's specific disability, and they literally can do anything. And another thing that excited me about it was the prizes were amazing, and they've gotten, even better. And so I ended up, because we won, I had a meeting with Sean, who is the creator of The Shield, which is one of my favorite shows from a while ago. And he still makes tons of television. So, I think I won some other things, but the thing I was most excited about was that meeting with him, because, he's a creator, he's a showrunner. Yeah, they should do it. I don't get it.
I think it was because it was coming from me, teachers don't know, you know what I mean? I'm hoping that was the only reason. So I'm totally going to be playing this portion in class next semester. So you should do it, because you could have an interview or a conversation with a showrunner, just you and that person. Yay.
That's amazing. And now, it's even more high profile. It's a very high profile contest because it's the only one like it. So if they want to get their foot in the door, camper, from whatever 3,000 miles away. It's one of the ones they actually should do.
All right. Well, thank you so much for talking about that, because that was definitely one of the things that I wanted to touch base on while we were talking. So moving right along. So you had the interview with the showrunner, or not interview, but conversation with the showrunner for The Shield. And I saw on your resume that you ended up shadowing someone on The Shield.
I did, actually. So when they were shooting it, I'd been working on another show for, I want to say, Showtime. And the whole camera grip and electric crew actually was from The Shield. And so the show had been on a long time, but I'd never watched it. And I loved the grip, camera, and electric crew on the show I was on. And they said, oh yeah, we're going to go do The Shield. It's the best show, not just to watch, but to work on. They were just so happy, and they were great. So I just stayed in touch with them. So I ended up shadowing Michael Chiklis, the star of the show. He directed an episode. And so the camera department hooked me up with that. And, he was great. Vic Mackey is this character, but obviously Michael's completely not like that. Yeah, I got to be on the set, and because I was a fan of the show by then, it was just a double whammy of joy. It's like I was shadowing, but I was also on literally my favorite show at the time.
That's awesome. So you got that shadowing opportunity because of your work connections with the crew, basically.
Yes.
And how about some of the other ones? Like if someone wanted to start to get into shadowing, I mean, no one wants to get into shadowing. Everyone wants to actually direct, but that's like a step along the way. So for this piece of it, how were you able to kind of get your foot into the door, even to shadow? And just for people who don't know, like it's an unofficial thing, but basically like if you want to direct television, you should shadow television directors first. Does that sound right to you? I
mean, yes, except that nowadays it's almost just like a sentence they just throw at you. Like, oh, you need to shadow. Oh, shadow. What's your experience already? And maybe you actually don't need to shadow. Maybe you've already shadowed, 7 shows. Right now, it's a little bit contentious because it's sort of an easy throwaway thing. Like, oh yeah, we'll help you. We'll let you shadow. And it's like, actually, that's not helping me anymore. Right. I mean, absolutely, that helps someone who, has never been on a television set, who's never worked in television.
And for you, that's kind of absurd.
Yeah. I mean, I come from the set, my background's in production. I was, a member of the assistant directing team, for years on all kinds of episodic and movies of the week and things like that. And then I actually have been fortunate enough to shadow a lot of, directors that I already knew, or directors that I got to meet through other departments, like the Shield example. And so it's becoming a little bit broken because it's just a go-to, and in the end, are they paying you to do it? Are they wasting their time? Are they wasting your time? And I mean, it's not true across the board, but it's like you need to look at, if you're an exec throwing that out, who are you actually saying it to? Now, on the other hand, we directors that want to start directing television is like the ones of us that have shadowed a ton by now. We're like, you know what? We're happy to shadow, like book us for an episode. And Kimberly Pierce does this. She was booked on Dear White People a couple years ago to go direct her episode. And she went the week before so that she could, it wasn't like shadowing exactly, but she went so she could be available. She could meet the crew. She could get the vibe of the show. Like, I'm all for that. I think that's amazing. So, book us. And then if you want, whatever you want to call it, we're happy to.
But there sounds like there's a difference between that where you're being hired and shadowing is a part of the hire versus just being brought on to shadow. Like do people get paid to shadow? Because everyone that I know that has done it, they haven't gotten paid.
Well, some do if you're going through a program.
Right.
So,
okay.
There's a lot of these programs, and this is like a big, big, big topic. There's all these programs, but there's been a disconnect even with the programs, because you might get a slot at one of them, whether it's Fox or, HBO or ABC or something like that, but you're not guaranteed an episode. I literally know one woman who has been in, I think, every program, and she still hasn't booked an episode. And she's more than capable, and now she's been in every program. And I'm like, why are you making us do multiple programs? What is your program doing if you're not actually getting your curated group a shot at, directing? And it'd be one thing if it was like, well, they do for most of them, but maybe some people fall to the side because, not everybody can handle it. I get that. And sometimes you might get into a program, but you're really not cut out for it. I get that. But we're talking more like the overwhelming majority, like maybe 80, 90%, maybe even 100%, none of them are going on to direct episodes after their program at that particular studio. And so It's like, what are you doing? But then I've talked to some of the folks that work in those diversity directing programs, that are the execs there. And then the ones I've spoken to, they're extremely frustrated too, because they aren't able to get their curated group in where they need to go, because the support from the showrunner isn't there, or the overall overarching support from the network or the studio isn't there. So they're doing their jobs, and they are curating their groups, but there's no bridge. So where it has begun to change, thank God, is last year, Karen Horn at NBC Universal, she started the very first, and it's specifically for women, it's called Female Forward. And so they curated a group of 10 female directors, and each of them were guaranteed their episode. And then they replicated that this year, and they picked a second group of 10 women. And yes, they're shadowing, right, for that. And I think the ladies I spoke to, they had to shadow 3 episodes on their specific show. So say it was like Law and Order or something. Mm-hmm. And then they got to direct their episode. And I did watch a lot of their episodes, and they were phenomenal. They were amazing. Some of them were the best episodes I've ever seen, because I love all the NBC shows, so I've seen like every episode of every show practically. And they were the best. And it's like, so, and they were paid. So that's an example where you're actually paid to shadow and you're guaranteed an episode. That's like the best way to do it, if you're going to do it that way to help.
And you said it's called Female Forward?
It's called Female Forward. It started in 2018, and I know they did do it again in 2019. And as far as I know, those 10 female directors are getting a guaranteed episode.
Wow. I feel kind of like sheepish even saying this, but I always thought, and I'm clearly not right about this, but I thought that when you got into one of those programs, that was the entry point into their, to get on their list of directors that are hireable. And you're saying not so much anymore.
Not at all.
Not at all.
I mean, maybe, 5% of the time. I don't know, but it's not the majority. It's like the tiniest percent. And it's just a disconnect, it's just a huge disconnect until somebody can do it the way that Karen Horn and her department is doing it at NBC Universal. You're going to have situations like my friend who has done so many I think like seven or 8 programs, and she still hasn't landed an episode. And it is not her, it is the system, because they keep having her in their different programs, not repeating it. And the problem I see there too is like, if I'm an individual that has to do even 4 of those, then I'm taking chances away from 3 other directors. There should be a program where one of us does one program. And like you said, that's what makes sense. But I know there's a lot of frustration internally. Like, we're the directors.
So what do you think? So you gave Female Forward as a huge step forward and a possible solution, or one of the solutions. What else would you look for or hope for as a solution to this problem?
Ooh, wow. That's a great question. I think there's so many layers to that question, because a lot of it is systemic. A lot of it is what some people like to call unconscious bias, but I don't necessarily think it's unconscious. I like to call it conscious bias. Mm-hmm. Although there is unconscious bias, and even I have it. There's the old way of doing things where, what we're doing is top secret. Filmmaking is top secret. It's brain surgery. It's rocket science. It's not for everyone. We want to keep you out, especially if you're not, what we're used to looking at, which is, straight, white, middle-aged, or old, cis-born male. And you have to wait. And then some people wait their whole lifetimes, and they don't get the access and opportunity. So I think it's systemic, and it comes down to access and opportunity. If you look at what, Ava DuVernay's done with Queen Sugar, that's a fantastic example. Or what Tanya Sriracha's done with Vita, also a fantastic example, where in Ava's case with her show, she has actively gone out on her own to find specifically women directors who are talented as all get out, so talented, but they don't have reps and they've never directed an episode of television. And that's how she curates her directors for her show. And the show is stunning. The show is award-winning. So this whole fake narrative of you have to be a rocket scientist, or, you know, we're gonna keep you out because this television work is top secret, no one can handle it, but, you know, the old veterans, that is the old memo. The new memo is what Ava's doing, and it's not even a memo. Like, she is writing the book. You know, same with Tanya on Vita. I mean, how many awards has Vita won? Come on. And it works. You know, she's specifically gone out and said, I want queer directors, you know, that are first timers in some situations. I want Latinx directors, and her show's brilliant. It's possible. I think from everything that I've sort of seen and heard and observed and listened to, and the feedback and other folks' experiences, it comes down to the showrunner. So the showrunner is really the one who's going to greenlight you. Now the execs at the studio and the network have to sign off, but the showrunner is really the gatekeeper, and that's who has to be like an activist practically,
right.
You know, activists like these other showrunners saying, we are giving, or even just say, I think one practical thing that any showrunner can apply is just say, look, if you have 20 episodes or if you have 10 episodes for your season, why don't you set aside a small percentage, 3 of 10 or something like that, and say, I'm going to give these slots to first-time capable, first-time episodic directors. None of us are first-time directors, but I'm going to specifically allocate this to women, and then make sure that when you say women, you're not just saying white women, but you're saying all women, and make sure you're including women of color in that.
I mean, that would definitely put a crack in the dam.
Yeah, it might even break the dam. And so many female directors, you know, that didn't even have television careers 4 years ago have them now. So it's moving. But if you look at the statistics and everything we know and we've heard, obviously feature films, it's still only 4% female directors in feature films. And what's really bad is I literally had a guy say this to me. He goes, yeah, I guess women haven't really wanted to direct. Are you kidding me? Right? Thank you for that. I was like, dude, you are so out of touch. But television's gone up to 16 or 17%, but still think about it. So you're saying like out of 100 films, 3 are directed by women. So 97 male directors, 3 female directors. Like, why are we okay with this? Why is there not a riot? Basically, you're saying we can't earn for our families. We can't put money in our bank. We can't buy houses because we can't work at our craft because, you know, it's 97 versus 3. So in television, it's gone up, but there's a long way to go. And this is why there's, you know, all the gender parity movements, 50-50 by 2020 and all this kind of thing. But the needle needs to move a lot faster.
So you're obviously very closely involved with the JTC list, but you're also in like a bunch of other organizations. And so I guess I'm wondering now, from your view, having been involved with so many organizations, do you find that these groups are helpful in moving the needle or no?
Oh, that's such a good question. I think it also depends on who you are. I do. Obviously, I continually sign up for them. And the JTC list, I can't even join, right? I'm not a member. But I feel like it's one of, if you are a woman of color and you're listening to this, that is the one to sign up for. Because whether you're a director or a production designer or, you know, anything in between, I just feel like everything Cheryl's doing, everything the organization's doing, everything we're doing is about real traction and real needle moving, glass shattering stuff. And I think it's because she is a producer. You know, the other organizations, like even the Producers Guild, okay, they're all producers, but that's all they are. You know, I'm in Alliance Women Directors, fantastic. I'm in Film Fatales, fantastic. But we're all directors, you know, and we're kind of run by directors. And then that's all we are. So one thing I think is amazing about Women of Color Unite, the JTC list, Cheryl Bedford's organization, nonprofit, is that she's a producer and she sees the big picture. So I feel like a lot of the opportunities that she's bringing to the membership have teeth. They really have teeth. There's been like pitches at Fox. There's a meeting at Universal for production people. But I do feel like the ones that I can belong to, like AWD and Film Fatales, what they've been able to do, each of them, it's helped me. So I think it depends on who you are. I feel like I get a lot of help from my director groups, and I thrive off of that. And I love all of us. And like Jen McGowan's at Glass Elevate. So 2 weeks ago, there was a free class, and it was for this program called Scriptation. It's like a paperless way to keep track of all your notes. We were in there, and 18 months ago, 4 of the women in there were not working in television. And now they are. So I was really excited. Yeah, it's happening. And it's not happening for the whole room of us yet, but it is happening.
So two last questions. First is, how do people find you and how do we support your work?
Aw. All my handles are just my full name, Rosser, Rosser, Goodman, like Goodman, on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, my website. I guess follow me. People like to see how many followers you have.
They really do, don't they?
Yeah. It's not necessarily going to make or break you getting work. It certainly helps. Really, the best way to support me is to support all women filmmakers. Because I really feel like if one of us wins, we all win. When the percentages are 4% in features and 16, 17% in television, you need to support women in general. Even who am I hiring? So if I'm a female that wants to be hired in my field, which happens to be directing, we all hire people all the time, whether it's our dentist, our doctor, someone to, put in a new floor. We hire people constantly. You have to look. You have to try. You can't just be like, I can't give up. I can't find a handy woman. I need to keep looking. So I would say the best way to support me is support women. Go watch women's films. Look at the credits when you're watching a show. Who was the female director? And if it was, hit her up on Twitter, hit her up on Instagram and say, if you loved her episode, I do that all the time. Just do that. We cannot settle. We cannot be complacent. We, as a group, we have to take action it's like be the change you want to see. So I want to be hired as a female director. So I need to hire women at all turns if I can.
That's a great philosophy. Last but not least, what is something that you are excited about right now that has absolutely nothing to do with film or television?
Oh, man.
I want to hear what that giggle was about.
I was ready for my answer if it did have to do, because there's my new feature film. I'm working on a third feature that actually Cheryl's producing, and it's called Love Is. It's very intersectional, and it's a romantic comedy, and it's going to be amazing, and we're just in development right now. But so not including that, I guess I'm most excited for my wife's work. She is doing clothing design now, and she's done a t-shirt. She's done a drawing that we call the Proper Bunny, and she's starting a whole series called, get ready, the Afro Panda. Yes. So she probably has 100 different drawings in the Afro Panda series, and so she's going to launch that soon. It is just the cutest, the most fun, and I'm truly excited about it, and I can't wait to wear mine.
That's very cool. Does she have a website for it yet?
Yeah, right now the website is theproperbunny.com or onegoodscircle.com. It all goes to the same place. So that's where the Afro Panda will be coming soon.
Well, thank you so much. I actually have more questions that I could ask you, but we have gone over time. This was a great conversation. Thank you very, very much.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm happy to come back.
When you guys get your feature, when Love Is comes out, you and Cheryl should come on the show together and talk about it. That'll be fun.
It'd be really fun to do it together. You're right. That's genius. Thank you so much.
You've been listening to Directing Magic with Marquette Jones. Be sure to visit directingmagic.com for past episodes and other information relating to the show. Also, be sure to subscribe and rate and comment on iTunes. Until next time, bye-bye.